cumulative frequency question. And you can see there that the first part, it tells us that there is a group of 120 students. So 120 that sat this history exam. And this shows the scores of each student. So the first thing is to make or to find the median. So the median is the halfway point. So if I have 120 students, half of that is 60. So I'm going to go to 60 and I'm just zooming in to make it a little bit easier, go across here until I find where it hits my graph. And I can see it's roughly in between those two lines. So I now just need to work out what that is. So this is 70, which is my halfway between 60 and 80. And therefore I can see it's approximately 75. Now, obviously in a test, you can't zoom in. So we just do the best we can in those situations. And you're usually given a small allowance to either side. So 75 for this one. And this is worth 2 marks. So there's 1 mark for doing some sort of method on your graph, even if it's incorrect, and 1 mark for your answer. And then the next one is the students were awarded a grade from 1 to 5, depending on the score that they got in the exam. And we don't know how many students scored either A or B, or scored a 4 or a 5. So we need to first of all find an expression for A in terms of B. Now we know from the previous information that there was 120 students, and therefore they all add together to make 120. So 6 plus 13 plus 26 plus A plus B must equal to 120. And it asks for the expression in for A in terms of B. So for A means we want to end with an A equals. So if I collate my numbers together and then subtract them to take them to the other side, then I find that I've got 75. There are 45 when I add together this side. So 75 is equal to A plus B. And therefore A is equal to 75 minus B. So I'm taking B to the other side of the equation. So the mean grade, we're now told, is 3.65. And we need to calculate how many students got a 5. So basically it's asking us to find what is the value of B. So in this situation, we can't use our GDC to find the mean, and that's why we also need to know our formulas on how to find them by hand. So to find the mean by hand, we're going to do the grade level, and we're going to multiply that by the number of students, or the frequency. So the grade times the number of students. So 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 13 is 26, 3 times 26 is going to give me 78. 4 times A is just 4A, and 5 times B is 5B. And we know that the final mean is 3.65. Here it is, 3.65. So it tells us down here. So normally to find the mean, we would do the total of all of these numbers multiplied together. Okay, so adding together these final answers, and we divide it by the total of this one here. So I need to find my total of these multiplied numbers. So if I group those together and simplify them, I find that I've got 110, so 6 plus 26 plus 78, and then I have 4A and 5B. So that means that to find the mean, I have 110 plus 4A plus 5B, and when I divide that by 120, that will give me an answer of 3.65, which is the mean. So I now need to try to simplify this. The problem is I have A and B in my equation, and therefore I can't solve it. So instead, that's why what they told us to do earlier comes in handy. I can use this to substitute in instead of B, instead of A, so that I can find my equation for the mean in just one variable. So instead of having the A value here, I'm going to replace A with 75 minus B, because we know that that is the same as A. So I have 110 plus 4 times 75 minus B plus 5B. And when I divide that by 120, that equals 3.65. Now, you don't need to solve that by hand. You can if you want to. Instead, we can just type that straight into our numeric solver on the GDC. There's no squared terms in there, so we can use the numeric solver and we can find what that b value is. And on your GDC, you would type that as an x, not a b. So we would go to our calculator, math, up arrow, numeric solver. And you can see here I've typed in that equation and it's equal to 3.65. So we can now solve the equation. So don't forget you need to hit the solve key twice. And it gives us 28.0000. So that means that B is equal to 28. And that is what the question asked. How many people scored a 5? And the number of students that scored a 5 is B, which is therefore 28. And then the last part is to find the minimum score needed to obtain a 5. So if 28 students scored a 5, we're going to go back to our cumulative frequency, and 28 students, when I take that off from my 120 students, so the top 28, that takes me to 92. So the top 92 students. So I need to go across here and find out what grade that is equal to, and we can see that's exactly on that line. So obviously you're going to use a ruler and we can read across on our axis and see that that is 84, and therefore there are 84 marks needed to score a grade 5. So the marks for these questions, for the second one there, it was 2 marks for finding A in terms of B. So 1 is for a method of realizing that you needed to equate it to 120. So using the idea that the sum is 120. And then 1 is for the final mark for placing it together as an equation where A is a subject on its own. And then for part C, this was 3 marks. 1 mark is for realizing that you need to multiply and then divide to make it equal to the mean. And then the other mark is for substituting in that B value, and then at the end, finding your answer. And then the last part there is 2 marks. So similar to before, there is 1 mark for the answer and 1 mark for some level of working out on your graph.